We're back, right on time. Spanish punctuality, yeah?
I think this thing's going to fall off.
Whether you speak French or not, if I say, Voulez, vous coucher avec moi, I'm sure you all know what I mean, right? Okay, two things. First, don't get too excited. I'm already taken. Sorry, I know. Second, it's not me who says that. It's actually our group of panelists who want to show us where they sleep, at least for the moment, and tell us everything they know about innovations in accommodation. So let me introduce to you our panel moderator, here with me. I have to read it because there's a lot, and it's lovely. He's obsessed with making the world smaller by simplifying every possible difficulty cross-border. Is this right? He believes there is still a lot to do in order to make it easier for everyone to be able to work, to study, and therefore live anywhere in the world. An online booking platform for mid to long-term accommodation, whose purpose is allowing people to get housing abroad insanely easy. He's also our brand new winner of a B2C startup competition.
That's true.
He just comes, woo! Woo!
Thank you. That's the most beautiful introduction ever.
Wait, you don't even know his name yet. Hang on. Let's give a warm welcome now to Alejandro Artacho.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was the best intro ever. Yeah, remember? Yeah, maybe I wrote that one drunk one day or something.
Next time I'll charge you. Welcome him and his panel. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. But the most important people here today are these four amazing speakers. So I'm gonna give they're gonna do an intro, but then just to give you the names. So we have there are four disruptors here. So Jose, he has a company, 100 Rooms. He's going to tell you a little bit more for now. Then Mariano Kostelec, founder of Uniplaces, revolutionizing student accommodation. Then Kirill, he's a CEO of founder of Sen Hotels. And then Parker, CEO of Oasis Collections. Four great companies. And then if you guys can introduce yourself and tell a little bit more of what your companies are doing.
Sure.
And how you're changing accommodation?
Yes. So basically we are reinventing the hotel at Oasis, and kind of the fundamental concept is hotel meets home, and the idea is to create a perfect midpoint of accommodation that brings everything people like and value about hotels, which is quality control, service, amenities, leaves behind things they don't like, expensive, small, maybe not much variety of location, and combines that with what's great about short-term accommodation. Everyone, I'll say the word now because I'm sure people think it, Airbnb type accommodation, which people love, value, authenticity, choice, but you have to sacrifice those things you love about a hotel. And what we're doing is really sitting right in the middle, blending the two worlds and creating what we think is the best solution in the accommodations landscape.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, Parker. Then we go deeper into it. Kirill, please.
So I was on a learning panel earlier today. I'm full-time working right now in a company I started a year ago called Enki, but Ostrock is my previous company, which I started in 2010, and we are a white label meta search focused on hotel booking. So it's a similar user experience to Booking.com, but we aggregate everyone, and we have about 100 or so partners that have prices often lower than Booking.com, but the booking experience happens on the site itself. It's going to have 20 million net revenues this year. And I believe, no one's correcting me with the fact that I believe it's the fastest growing OTA, north of 10 million net revenues right now in the world. So.
Awesome.
Great. So what we're doing with Uniplaces is building the largest brand for student accommodation. And this is basically connecting students and landlords in the most efficient way possible. So imagine you're a student, you go to study, South Africa, London, or Shanghai, or wherever it is. Without Uniplaces, you really don't even know where to start looking for a place. And we're actually making that experience seamless and streamlined across all these locations across the world, and making it easier for both sides to connect, and making it easier to find a place to stay. And obviously, as part of that, improve, obviously, the entire student experience of the students.
Thanks.
Cool.
Jose?
So yeah, we at 100 Rooms are a vacation rental meta search. So basically we aggregate content from third parties like the Airbnb, HomeAways, and the likes. And we show those partners in a single search. So basically there are two things that makes us different. So one thing is that you have all the inventory, all the vacation rental inventory that is available online in one single search. And then through our own technology, we're basically able to identify that one single property is publishing more than one of these partners with different prices. Hence, we compare prices and we make sure the consumer always books at the best possible price. I couldn't say that we're that disruptive, so we're basically doing something very similar that Trivago or Kayak did in the past with a different category. So we basically think there's something going on, something very similar that went on back in the years when Trivago was launched and Kayak, just in a new whole category, which is as you guys know, growing exponentially.
Awesome, great. So guys, you guys are all innovating in different ways. Like, if you could summarize, what are the top innovations and why you're doing what you're doing, and then we'll go through the challenges that each one of you is facing in the different markets. And
sure.
So we start.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that, to kind of elaborate a bit, the innovation and thus the challenge is trying to think about how to sort of deconstruct and decentralize a traditional hotel, and thinking of each piece of it and how you can replicate it in a more asset-light way and enable it all to work together through technology, essentially. So when you think of, instead of going to one building where you have 200 rooms and you have a spa and you have a front desk and you have a bar, how can you replicate that effect, but again in a decentralized, cheaper, and ultimately cooler and more authentic way by putting it out into the community. So basically what we're doing is we're going and personally vetting and finding accommodations around a city that all have sort of a similar design aesthetic, uniqueness, but a similar aesthetic, a certain quality level. We're adding a concierge via a mobile app where we have people in the office running around the city, accessible via mobile app, that are able to sort of fill that hotel concierge point. We've partnered with a lot of on-demand services, such as in-home massage or an in-home beauty company called Glam Squad that's big in the US. So you can sort of have that spa and beauty experience if you need to. And so really we're not really, from a technology perspective, I think of us as, we're not building groundbreaking technology. We're sort of being clever about using technology that's out there, whether, again, it's app chat or other on-demand technologies that are available, and sort of putting them together in a way that's ultimately offering an awesome user experience. So I think that's
everything in one single app.
Everything in one single app or in one single company. So where for Oasis, it's not, oh, I need to go find a home through this person. Oh, now I need to go research neighborhoods through this person. Now I need to go try to find a gym when I go to a city. It's all through Oasis, and that's, I think, what, to other people's points here, it's all about trying to make the user and traveler experience as flawless as possible and really let them maximize their 4 days in Madrid or even 4 months. We do a lot of extended stay stuff where people really care about plugging into what they have to offer. And instead of having to search 100 different sites and ask your friends, if you could just come to Oasis and they sort accommodation and services, et cetera, I think that's what we're trying to do.
From pickups, from the airport, like things like that, all around it?
Airport pickups.
City guides.
Stock the fridge. We curate our own city guides. Yep, so you sort of open up your city and you've got a list of 100 curated places as opposed to having to go to a place like Yelp and Time Out and sort of sift through a lot of information. So I think kind of curation and personalization are the two buzzwords that people like to throw around, and they're very important buzzwords for a reason in travel right now. So we're really trying to hone in on curation and personalization to let travelers maximize the experience and eliminate pain points.
Yeah. Cool. And talking about, you were mentioning technology, Kirill, you're a master, I think you have one of the biggest, teams of engineers and stuff. How did you, back in the times in Ostrobok, what is the technology that you guys built that, in my opinion, I think it's pretty amazing what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so I want to talk about the past, and then I'm going to talk about the future quickly. So in the past, the way we've innovated and got to the traction that we've had, which currently is about 400 million in gross sales, is purely to build a seamless user experience while aggregating more than 1 million hotels and apartments, where we figure out what is the best combination of prices and content on every single hotel page, which, given that there are more than 1 million hotels, given in each hotel there are more than, on average, 3 room options, you have a lot of combinations here to potentially fuck up. And if you do that, it's a horrible user experience, which is why no one had really cracked it. Booking.com work in a completely different way because they work directly with hotels. But because we managed to crack that engineering problem, which took about 4 years with 150 developers, we're able to get unit economics which are scaling now. In terms of the future, it's all about data. I just want to step back in terms of the travel industry and mention, I think the next 10 to 15 years is going to be all about data and network effects related to data. In the last 15 years, we've seen Booking.com become the big leader in a kind of, I think, a Web 1.0 way of just getting the inventory online and being smart about attracting the right users to the right inventory, right? But no one's figured out how to actually apply network effects using data. So every booking you make, how is that going to make your experience much better, materially better in the future? And that's the problem we're spending the next 5 years on, and we have 100 of the best developers in Russia right now focused on that problem. How do we essentially build a machine learning algorithm, which is essentially statistics for predicting what you want to book and when, which right now is better done by a travel agent if you have the time and money to spend on it.
And are you thinking also in business models aside of what you're doing? Like I imagine like some providers, they might want to use this data in order to provide the best offer. Like are you guys planning, because you're talking about the user experience, that it improves the user experience, but what about the other side, the supply, and getting benefit of your data? And are you thinking about different revenue streams?
Well, look, our clients, we have the customers, but also the hotels, which we're driving business to and improving and increasing each of their market shares, right? So for us, the better the unit economics, the happier the customers are, the happier all our partners are, which are hotels, which are all our other OTA partners that are providing the inventory and so on. So that's the ultimate focus, is how do you keep improving the unit economics to something that can scale even when you have massive scale, once your sales are in the billions. And so I think the next kind of $50 to $100 billion opportunity to travel is really around network effects applied using data.
Super interesting, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
Mariano, how are you guys?
So I think one of the probably similar things to what Killer mentioned about the hotel space is that we are aggregating the entire supply in one platform, and by doing that we bring a lot of transparency. We really know what are the prices in different locations, neighborhoods, everywhere, and we can compare that and make it really transparent for both users as well as landlords. And as we build that supply in every city, really dominating like every piece of accommodation that students might need, you can literally use data, I think similar to you guys, and like tell landlords, how to even maximize the revenue, really manage occupancies on an ongoing basis. Imagine someone has a big portfolio of properties across the city and we rent them to students. We can really help them maximize the revenue and bring a lot more value to them than they could, without that sort of data and that sort of technology. And the other thing that's actually really interesting, and I think it's something that we brought to the market that no one else has in any country, is that because we have a marketplace, focusing on students, and we got tens of thousands of students, booking accommodation, we can really know which properties are going to be rented, and so on. And we basically offer landlords the ability we guarantee to landlords the rent of the properties, in a sense that when they get a booking from Uniplaces, that's a guaranteed booking. They know that no matter what happens, if the student leaves, let's say a student that comes from China to Europe and then has something that has to go back before the end of the contract, we guarantee to the landlord that they will get the income until the end of the stay, regardless of that person going out. And that's something that we can do because of the algorithms we have to match the students with those properties and really rent them out again and work with insurance providers to really facilitate that experience for the landlords. I think this is obviously the beginning of in terms of innovation, but there's going to be a lot more to come down the line when you look at things like how we can actually even standardize and improve the entire experience of students in those properties. You know exactly what are the perfect type of accommodation that students prefer, and you can really start getting deeper and deeper into that and make the better supply in every city.
Yeah, I was going to ask because it's with this model, it's also very personal, and this is a question to everyone. Actually, it's two questions. Okay, one, because you were talking about supply, and I guess we all have marketplaces, and then then we go, Jose, to you. Yeah. But then, marketplaces, and one of the challenges I think it's supply, and it's how are you guys thinking on controlling more the supply? I imagine that you guys, all your bookings doesn't go through in all the platforms. Well, your model is a little bit different. So before going to that, maybe Jose, just explain yourself, and then we go to that challenge of the supply.
Okay, yeah, so just answering how we're innovating, basically, no? So we basically see ourselves like a tool, like a tool that adds some transparency into the market. Basically, we want to, tell the users and the consumers, give them all the information that is necessary so they're able to take a better decision when booking a vacation rental platform. So it took us a while to really realize what we wanted to be, but once we had that clear, we basically were really focused on product development. No? There's a lot of things a lot of resources that we allocate to what we call the basic of our technology, which is, our algorithm that recognizes different properties from different partners. We put a lot of resources in having all the inventory that is online, in really making sure that the prices that we give are accurate, and doing all that in a smooth, with a really nice user experience. But we also realized that wasn't really enough for us, that was kind of the basics, but if we wanted to succeed in the market, we needed some tools, products, functionalities that generated a lot of value to the user, and actually, were driven by technology and data, and made us have a barrier for any competitor. So we're doing 3. We're launching actually in the next quarter. We're launching 3 products that are really data-driven. So the first one is what we call a recommendation tool. So we're going to be able to tell consumers, based on on their past behavior, the properties that you're more likely to like, and even more. So with that technology, we're going to be able to predict for new customers whether they like some kind of properties or others. The second thing that we're working on and we'll be launching is a price predictor. So basically, we've been, there's a lot of functionalities around price, but we've been accumulating a lot of data on our users. So we're going to be able to tell the users, whether it's a good moment to book this property or whether it's a good moment, to book on one specific destination, or if it's, 20% less expensive to do it, let's say, the next week. And the third one, that it's really also based on data and innovation, is the technology per se is not innovative, so it's kind of sentimental analysis. What is new is that we're going to aggregate, the reviews from all the main partners, and we're building our own algorithm. So that's, the value of that is that, basically aggregates everything. So those are the 3 things that we're working on.
Cool. So let's go to the bad sides, the challenges. So supply, what are you guys, how can you assure, in order to have the best experience, the supply that you have on your different platforms?
Yeah, I'll start by saying that I think that our challenge, and probably for many in the travel and hospitality space, because it's such a huge, crowded space with so many players, is more awareness and demand than supply. Our particular proposition on the owner side, we're going to owners and saying, hey, you could, spend a lot of time yourself managing a listing on Airbnb. You can let your property sit empty. We're going to offer you the ability to make money from your property and not have to do any work because we do it all for you. It's a pretty compelling proposition. Yeah. It almost seems too good to be true. Now, the part that is the challenge is, in order for the owner to kind of hit the bid on that, is sounds awesome, sounds too good to be true, but do you have the demand, right? And that's the sort of challenge where, at subscale, how are you driving demand in a very, very crowded industry? And for us, who are kind of in the middle of, as I said, kind of hotels on one side and more sort of peer-to-peer platforms on the other side, we're competing with them and everyone between. So in the same way I'm competing against Hilton, in some ways, I'm also competing against Airbnb in other ways. So how are we driving awareness and demand? That's a huge challenge. On the supply side, I'll speak specifically about supply in terms of controlling the quality of it. For us, definitely that is a challenge. We're trying to, because our brand promise is, it is the same sort of predictability and quality you would expect out of a hotel, but we don't own the assets, right? Yeah. We don't own these properties, so we have to go out and partner with owners who are willing to sort of submit to the quality standards that we apply, and we're doing this in 25 cities and 13 countries on the ground, reviewing every single property with a 70-item punch list. So I think the challenge for us on the supply side isn't finding it or getting it. It is the quality control side of it, and how do you do that at scale? And meanwhile, pouring in the demand at kind of a high level. I mean, that's our big challenge.
Any more
Challenges?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, on the supply side, I think it's clear that the demand drives the supply, right? I mean, and the challenge is not to do that for a limited number of properties that you're working with, because if you focus on those, you can do it. The challenge is, in our case, when you have 2,000 hotels in Madrid, say, how do you keep the bottom 500 happy, because they're getting the less value? Because the less supply, the less demand you drive them, the more likely they are to not update their availability, which results in a bad consumer experience every now and again, and so on. So figuring out how to do that at scale in cities that are key is important. Second big challenge is funding. Right now, things are not terrible. We heard a few people speak earlier about funding climate. It's better than people thought it would be 6 months ago, but it's not great if you need to raise a lot of money and your unit economics may or may not be where investors would be used to, given where we are from 5 years ago, for example. So we've raised $55 million, but we had to still get to break even because it's a very resource-intensive business. It takes a couple of hundred people to build what we have built. And people forget that Booking.com didn't really hit serious traction until they got investment of north of 150 million from Priceline about 10 years ago when they were acquired. So it takes a lot of capital to build these really resource-intensive marketplaces. And that's a challenge right now.
Well, and actually that brings, like Airbnb, all the money that they're getting and stuff. Like, how do you see, in your markets, like the short-term market, like all these players fighting there together, like Expedia, Airbnb, Priceline, all these guys? What is your view that is going to go, and how the market is going? And like Jose, Kirill, and Parker, they are in the short-term accommodation, but Mariano is in the long-term accommodation. So, I would like to see your view on that. And then also, Mariano, how it would affect, to long-term, how do you see that? So maybe you guys...
Yeah, I mean, this is a question that... well, I'm sure you do also, but we get asked a lot, how about Airbnb? So are they going to dominate the world and the vacation rental, market? We don't see it that way, Obviously Airbnb, has really made a breakthrough, in particular in the urban properties and in the urban destinations. But what we see is that there's going to be a market that is going to be dominated by the 4 big players, which are Booking, TripAdvisor, HomeAway, Expedia, and Airbnb. But then again, you have a bunch of small and medium-sized players, that work on their own. So you have a lot of, let's say, property managers in Mallorca or in Mexico, that they have 300-400 properties. Sometimes they don't even work with the Airbnbs or HomeAways of the world. So, I think it's pretty fragmented, much more than the people really think, and it's going to keep it that way. Mm-hmm.
Mariano, how do you see the long-term accommodation and these players?
So I think the long term is a bit different. It's still very much more fragmented actually than the short stay market is at the moment. You don't see any dominant player like an Airbnb or Booking.com. And I think that's, from our case, is where we aim to become, that global player and aggregate the supply and make the brand globally, on that sort of scale. But as discussing, it's obviously expensive. The acquisition of supply is really one of the key factors of that. In our case, we raised so far about $30 million, and we see in the cities we've been working and acquiring the supply, the key focus really has been on really getting the right unit economics, getting them to profitability, getting a few countries to profitable stages, and see how to replicate a lot faster. That's where we see a big, what we need to develop. And I think overall, as we scale and accelerate, and obviously we see that we are still at the very early stages of that. There's still a lot of scope to grow in the coming years. I think, in the next, 3, 4, 5 years, probably there's going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 players globally that, capture this longer-term student space or longer-term space in general. which is the case of the Airbnbs or bookings that, you have 2, 3 big global players that, take a big chunk of the market. And I think this is going to happen in our industry, which today is still at the very early stages.
So do you think that Airbnb and these guys are going to go to the long-term accommodation?
No, I think Airbnb and Booking, all these guys, they're in travel space. For them, what's interesting is getting a lot more into, add verticals, other things they can do to help travelers, even potentially business travelers, which is, what they're focusing on is very different from the longer-term space where, from a supply perspective, which is the core of most of these platforms, the infrastructure you have to build to rent short stay is very different from a longer term. Literally things like you don't need to clean a property every day, you clean it once every 2 weeks or a month. You don't need to have check-ins, check-outs every day, so a lot of infrastructure is different. And when you talk, in our case, at Uniplaces on the student market, there it gets even more different. Because students, obviously, they wouldn't go to a travel website to book their accommodation. They're much more related to student brands, to student communities, to what universities are offering them. And we are positioning Uniplaces in that space, which, it's interesting because if you look at students, you may not realize, but globally, literally, students spend $500 billion on different non-academic expenses. A third of that goes for accommodation. So it's literally a $250 billion market there that is still super fragmented, and that's where we are capturing, obviously step by step, but the opportunity is huge, and it's on a global scale.
And I think in your market there is something different with hotels at the end. It's the factor of a social factor about people booking together. And when you're a student and you go with your friends and stuff, and also you want to see the tenants that they're living. But I think that also happens, in Airbnb in short term. They rent like a room, and then you don't know who else is there, and maybe you go for a weekend. You might want to see, right?
The community piece and sort of the kind of grown-up co-living is a pretty interesting trend, and one where like a WeWork, which is the biggest player in co-working right now, a $16 billion valuation company, has decided to create something called We Live, which mixes sort of long-term accommodations with some short-term stays, with community rooms, and sort of very fosters community interaction a lot. And something where I think for our concept also, again, we're not a backpacker-focused concept. We're a bit older, and you might say, like, people in their 30s, 40s, traveling for work or with their families, they really care about community aspect, and I think there is a part of it that they still do care about. I think it's very interesting to try to solve that, and it's kind of a broader comment on the classic disconnection of humans in the digital age. And I think when people do travel, even if you're 50 years old and you're married, like you kind of like to interact with other people. So we created a concept called the Clubhouse, which is basically like a private social club that we operate in a few of our core cities. And as an Oasis traveler, you have access there. So we're not forcing it on you, right? You still have your own private accommodation, because again, this is a bit of a more grown-up level of it. But if you want to go meet other travelers or locals, we're sort of facilitating that for you. I think it's an interesting trend, that sort of community co-living trend.
Yeah, that's very cool. And, actually that brought something to my mind about alternative accommodations, and like now, I don't know how many there are, like glamping, champing, I don't know. I read like some people that they share, showers and stuff, and they are like, they ride bikes and stuff. So what do you think of those markets and how they are going to conglomerate or aggregate, into something, it's going to be Airbnb gathering all of that, in Australia, people go in caravans and stuff, and not that much in hotels, or it's going to be Booking.com, like going to apartments and into alternative accommodations?
Well, I think camping is the only thing in the world I don't want technology to touch. Everything else, let's go for it, guys. Make it invisible, whatever. Camping, no technology. I mean, it's a question of availability, right? I mean, I think one of the features, I'll tell you a story. When we first started signing up hotels directly, most of our million-plus hotels are through partnerships, but we have about 20,000 or so which are signed up directly, and we started initially in Eastern Europe just because no one else had those hotels. And how would we do the deals with it would be with the son of the hotel owner, over a glass of vodka. And because it's not work for them, it's life, right? And so I think it depends how well they're able to actually embrace that technology, and if they want to, because there's some of these hotels, we call them the vodka deal hotels. We switch them off, right? Because it's they want to be found in other ways. So that's my 2 cents on that.
But do you think, for example, Jose, you have an aggregator, right, a meta search, so it wouldn't be cool? I know a company, for example, is Glamping Hub. I don't know if David is here. It's a cool company, you know, like aggregating, you know, into one platform. You know, I think you told me, you know, about Argentina, that people prefer to go in the, you know, in caravans, what I mentioned in Australia. Maybe, you know, all these platforms we can aggregate all together, you know, and increase the supply for the users.
So for us, it's basically we approach it as one more, you know, typology of accommodation. So we have them in the site as long as they're coming from some other aggregator like Airbnb, HomeAway. We have them. So I don't have a clear view on that. You know, I still think that it's very niche. You know, it's very, you know, small in a sense to have a global aggregator. So as a consumer, my question will be, you know, whether I have everything in a vacation rental meta search, for example, you know, where you have everything, you know, caravans, campings, showers, rooms.
Maybe also new models like, you know, Airbnb per hours. You know, you are there in the street, you need to take a shower or you know, and then you need somewhere or maybe to have a phone call and stuff. I think those models get also interesting in getting, you know, as much cash as you can from accommodation. So, yeah, we have only 30 seconds. So, guys, it went very fast. So thank you very much. I don't know if anyone has... just maybe one question or something. 30-second question. While they do the question, probably the time is going to be over. So, do you want to ask anything to our speakers?
There's no time for many questions unless you hurry up.
Come on.
Well, at the pace that they speak, I think they've answered all the questions. Mainly Alejandro, yeah?
All right. Okay, guys, thank you very much. You guys are awesome. And you know,
thank you
for coming to South Summit, and let's enjoy it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.